All right, everybody. All right, you heard the line. You knew it was coming, so we got that out of the way. Let's get to the video now. So in this video, I want to focus on the career of M. Night Shyamalan, the writer-director, and I'm not going to do this alone. I will have some help from Matthew Movies.
Kill me, I'm here! Kill me!
The way this video is going to work is I'm going to let Matthew Movies talk about M. Night Shyamalan, his strengths and weaknesses, mainly as a writer. And then I will mainly focus on his strengths and weaknesses as a director. Of course, there will be some crossover because writing, directing, these are things that go hand in hand. And then we each, at the end of this video, will talk about where we want to see his career go in the future. So like I said, we're going to start things off here with Matthew Movies, mainly focusing on M. Night Shyamalan as a writer.
Hey everybody, this is my thoughts on M. Night Shyamalan as a writer. I think the guy has some clear strengths and some clear weaknesses. I think as far as the weaknesses go, I think his biggest one is inconsistency. I mean, the guy has made movies like Sixth Sense and Unbreakable that are considered to be classics of the genres, and then he's made movies like The Happening and The Last Airbender that are just completely seen as dog crap, and for good reason on both ends of the spectrum. I think he's come up with some really unique and creative ideas, and then he's also just kind of plumbed the depths of his creativity and come up with ideas that a lot of the time have felt fairly derivative. And as his career kind of went on, there was a large portion of it that seemed to be like he was just doing things, like a lot of his movies that felt like takes on other things that directors had done before. Like I feel like with Lady in the Water, he was trying to make like a modern The Never-Ending Story, but without all the sci-fi elements, but like the same kind of concept of an idea, and it just didn't work at all. And then Signs, I mean, that ending is so blatantly ripped off from The War of the Worlds, and like the whole, there's so much going on in his career where he was just kind of cherry picking, I felt like, and I do think that it seems pretty obvious that he is a big fan of film, and so I definitely don't think that it's a coincidence that these ideas were kind of pulled out from, are very similar to things you've seen in other movies. And I think when he's kind of been on a bit of an upswing lately. I know a lot of people loved The Visit. I personally didn't, but at least you could look at The Visit as being something of a unique experience, and then Split was definitely a much more unique film. And I think now that he's getting back to more creative ideas, I think that's in his wheelhouse. I feel like he went through a period where maybe he wasn't able to get his ideas across as well in films, because I think he lost the power in Hollywood to really skip through a lot of the process that filmmakers go through. They really dumb down their scripts and their ideas, and I think as a result he kind of had to go much more of a kind of cookie cutter perspective. And that's why now that he's making these really low budget movies, with the last two both costing very little money, I believe like the last The Visit had a budget of $5 million, and Split had a budget of $9 million. And I think once he has that much smaller budget, he's able to get back to telling the types of stories that are more interesting and creative. And I think that's where he needs to stay. And I think he needs to make sure that he doesn't try to be like everybody else. I also think at times he doesn't think enough of his audience. I mean, like the moment in The Happening where the guy goes off on the long diatribe about hot dogs is so mind-bogglingly stupid. And the idea that he thought that would work in the movie, and that he didn't cut that, to me is just mind. Like he clearly thought he'd come up with some like great idea that people are gonna be like, hot dogs, you say? Oh well, that's a good point he's got there. And it's just such a stupid scene.
We're packing hot dogs for the road. You know, hot dogs get a bad rap. They got a cool shape, they got protein. You like hot dogs, right?
Some of the endings as his films progressed, like the twists were so predictable in points. Like The Happening, the way that movie ends, and what ends up being behind everything. Like, it's so awful, but it's also so blatantly obvious. I felt the same way about The Village. I thought had a pretty predictable ending. Lady in the Water. A lot of these movies just really felt very predictable. And then I think the epitome of him not thinking enough of his audience is After Earth, where there's so much inconsistency in that story, and there's so many parts of it that just make no logical sense. And there's so many holes, and I think he just was like, "Ooh, it'll be Will Smith and have these cool visuals, so people will forgive them." And clearly, that wasn't the case. And then I think his final weakness as a writer is the one that a lot of people talk about: his over reliance on twists. I mean, when you go and see an M. Night Shyamalan movie, you are if you're an audience member who is a fan, like not even a fan, but somebody who's followed his career, that you're gonna be probably the entire time being like, "Oh, what's the twist on this one gonna be?" Because the guy just goes to that twist way too often, and when you do it every time, it's so much more difficult to surprise people. And he pulled it off. I think with Split, I did not see the twist ending there coming, and that, but I think that's an exception. Like the twist in The Visit, the entire time I was watching that movie, I can't say that I specifically knew exactly what was going to happen, but the entire time I was just like waiting for it to come. And so when it did come, it was like I had like a momentary feeling from it, but overall I was just like, "Ugh." I think as far as his strengths go, I would say his biggest is his ambition over his career. I mean, if you think about it, the guy has really tried to tell some interesting stories. I mean, there are definitely, like I said, there's definitely some that I wouldn't say like, but like when you think of a movie like Unbreakable, the fact that he was able to put that movie together and come up and have the confidence to write a movie like that is both a superhero movie, but not and like a superhero movie in a way that is completely unique from any other that we've seen, especially when that genre was really starting to take off. I think that was very ambitious, and I applaud him for that. I also say the guy clearly seems to really love film. I've said before, I think that there was times where he pulled too liberally from other movies. Like there's aspects of his films or even whole films that feel like they're just complete rewritings of other films, and that's a major problem. But when you think of movies like the Sixth Sense and stuff like that, there's definitely, you can tell that he's going for a similar feel to like The Shining or something like that. You know what I mean? And I think that's really interesting. And I listed his over reliance on twist as a weakness, but I also got to list his ability to write a good twist as a strength, because there are definitely examples in his films where you were gonna be like, you need that gut punch at the end where you didn't like. I would say definitely The Sixth Sense obviously falls into that category. Unbreakable, the Split. I'd say that's probably it. I mean, I know some people felt like the twist in The Village was pretty surprising, so you can include that in there. But the fact that the guy has come up with some of the genre's most memorable twists, you got to give it up to him for that.
You like hot dogs, don't you?
When it comes to directing, M. Night Shyamalan clearly has talent. He wouldn't still be in the industry, if he didn't have some talent. And the way I look at it when it comes to Hollywood is kind of like, it is like writing. People that are really talented at it, they find success. On the other hand, people that are absolutely terrible about it, they can actually find an audience as well. It's kind of funny that way. But when you're in that sort of middle ground, that's where it gets to be kind of tough. But like I said, I feel like he definitely has talent as a director. I want to focus on his strengths first. Now, one big strength is his cinematography. I think his movies, they look beautiful. Like the way that he frames his shots, just the things that you see. I feel like there's really not wasted space within his scenes. Everything is there for a purpose, and I appreciate that. I like that there's thought put into it. Like with the Sixth Sense, if you know anything about the Sixth Sense, whenever there was the color red anywhere within the frame, that basically meant that something negative was going to happen. It was kind of a sign that something is off. that was, a sign that something was going to happen there. So, and speaking of signs, Signs is another movie, just great cinematography, everything the way that it looked. I love the news footage of that revealed the alien, like the first time them actually seeing it.
Move, children. Vámonos.
Está atrás de garage. Está atrás de ahí. It's behind.
Oh!
And in most movies, like most science fiction movies, that would have been very throwaway. To show an alien is really not a big deal, but for him to actually make that something that just made your heart kind of race or made you kind of freeze up for a moment, there's definitely talent there. And some other strengths that he had, and I do have some notes here that I'm going to refer to. I would say his camera movement as well. I like that he knows when to just let the camera stay still. There are some directors that feel like they're not doing their job if the camera's not moving, but sometimes you got to know when to just let it stay still. So I think he's good about that. He knows when to do his tracking shots. He also knows when to go handheld with it. For example, there's a great scene, and it really starts off the movie Unbreakable, where there's this child watching in between the seats on the train. There's a child watching Bruce Willis basically try to hit on this woman. Like, you even see the child like kind of looking down and seeing him like slide off his wedding ring. So that I really love that scene. To me, it just really set up that was going to be a good movie. So yeah, his camera movement I think is impeccable. He does a great job with that. Something else that he's really good at when it comes to directing is he knows when to use a close-up, and he somehow, because it's like really extreme close-ups can be uncomfortable. And sometimes that's the purpose of them. They're meant to be unsettling. And he does a great job with that. He knows when to use close-ups for the most part. There's every once in a while, like in The Happening, there were some close-ups there with Mark Wahlberg that just didn't really work. But that movie as a whole just didn't work. And, when I think about that, and this will kind of move me into the weaknesses there. Him as a writer, if it doesn't work on the page, there's only so much he can do as a director. And yes, I know he's playing both roles there, but it still holds true. If it's not on the page, there's only so much he can do as a director. So when you think about The Happening, there are some scenes that are well directed, but the dialogue is terrible. And I have a theory as well that with the acting, I mean, it's definitely one of Mark Wahlberg's worst. But I think he had kind of given up because he saw that this just wasn't going to be a good movie. And there's even some footage, some behind-the-scenes footage that's been shared. And I know I've seen it personally before on YouTube of the two of them, Mark Wahlberg, M. Night Shyamalan, having this discussion. And Mark Wahlberg pointing out something in the script that doesn't make any sense. And yet Shyamalan just kind of like having that attitude, like just smiling and laughing, like saying, we're going to do it anyway. We're doing it this way. And it's like because he didn't listen, I feel like Mark Wahlberg kind of checked out. And I feel like maybe some of the other actors checked out as well because they just realized this wasn't going to work. So yeah, like I said, if it's not on the page, there's only so much he can do as a director. And especially in The Happening, when you have a scene that's supposed to be like horrifying, but you have people running away literally from the wind, it's not going to be good. It's just, I don't know any director that could pull that off and make it interesting. There's nothing interesting about people running away from the wind. It just doesn't work.
Let's just break up into groups.
And there are some other issues he's had as well, like with the movie Signs, going back to Signs, which is still one of my favorites of his, but there are definitely some things that don't make sense in it. So, when it finally gets to the end, and there's actually, and I hope that you've seen this movie, I mean, there's really no way to talk about M. Night Shyamalan without getting into spoilers, but when it finally gets to the end and we finally see the alien within the home, it's nice that he shows some restraint, not constantly having the camera on the alien and everything, and using reflections. And I like that he does that too, using reflections sometimes and everything. But the fact that it came down to water being the thing that hurt the aliens was just ridiculous. You know, and I know a lot of people know what's wrong about that, but let me still point it out if you're not in the know. Okay, these highly intelligent aliens, they had to be highly intelligent to make it to our planet, you know, to travel across wherever they came from to make it here. Why in the world would they come to a planet that's 75% water if that's what hurts them? It makes no sense. It's just like, how could a writer miss that? And even with the happening, the whole concept, this idea of plants killing us, you know, by spreading these I don't know, pheromones, whatever it is, spreading something in the air that would get people to harm themselves. Again, it's somewhat of an interesting idea, but he, like, visually, what did that leave him as a director? He didn't leave himself much to work with, so he kind of set himself up for failure there with the writing. And there's been some of his other movies I kind of checked out on, like Lady in the Water. I saw a little bit of it. I just couldn't make it through it. It did nothing for me. The Village, I felt, was very disappointing because it was all about setting up that twist. And he gave himself a cameo. I talked before about him using reflections. He gave himself somewhat of a clever cameo in that because you only see him through a reflection in glass towards the end. But at the same time, I'll say this is another fault of him as a director, putting himself in his movies. Now, a lot of directors do this, but it doesn't always work. You know, Tarantino has put himself into movies, and sometimes he's been entertaining, but no, I don't think anybody's going to call Tarantino like a great actor. You know, there's been times when it's been kind of rough as well. And something else that I would say that he has in common with Tarantino, and this kind of goes along with being a writer and a director, is I think he looks at all of his words as being precious, and you can't really be that way as a director. You got to know when to make cuts. So I feel like there have been times in his movies where he left scenes in when they easily could have been cut. They didn't affect the plot, but he's being very self-indulgent. So like I said, he kind of has it in common with Tarantino. And I love Tarantino's movies. I really like Tarantino's body of work overall. But like I said, you know, both him and M. Night Shyamalan, I think they both can be kind of self-indulgent with their dialogue and think that everything is precious. So there really are some scenes in different M. Night Shyamalan movies where he could have cut them out, you know, and saved some time there. But, you know, I will say that with Split, I think he did a great job there with the directing. The directing is thorough all the way through. I was very engaged, very into that movie. Great close-ups throughout it. You know, there's a moment where one of the girls is giving another girl some advice to basically to keep herself from being abused. And the close-ups work so well there. Even the opening, like all the shot choices, like, I mean, he did a great job with it. So I really hope that trend continues. You know, we'll see what happens there. But like I said, he's got to get it right on the page so that he can really flourish as a director.
Aren't you the clever one?
An individual with multiple personalities can change their body chemistry with their thoughts.
Someone's coming for you.
Who's coming?
The beast.
When it comes to where I'd like to see M. Night Shyamalan's career go, I mean, one of the things I think would be really advantageous is I know that there are people that seem to have really enjoyed The Visit and enjoyed some of his dalliances with adding a little bit of humor to his films, like Devil. It's a movie he didn't direct, but he wrote and produced, and that movie got a lot more praise, and there's definitely, like, it's not an outright comedy. None of his movies are outright comedies, but there's a bit more of a lightness to it, and I personally would like to see him kind of get away from that. I was not a big fan of The Visit because I don't think that movie knew what it wanted to be. And don't get me wrong, there are lots of movies that bend genres like that, but for me, it just didn't work in that movie. And then one of the other things I really think would be interesting is, one, I'd like to see him make a movie that either A, he co-writes with somebody, or he just works off of another person's script. Because I think one of the problems with his career has been not only just his lack of confidence, but I also think at various points he's kind of run out of ideas. And like anybody, he has a career, and I don't think he wants to step away for an extended period of time. So when he doesn't have a good idea, he starts coming up with these ramshackle concepts that just don't land with anybody. And I feel like if he doesn't have an idea that is, you know, lighting his world on fire and that he feels really passionate about, then maybe look around and see if there's another script instead of just kind of throwing something together in order to keep working. Because I do really feel like that there is a very discernible difference between the movies that he felt passionate about and the movies that he didn't. And it's not like he's coming out and saying he didn't feel passionate about this movie or whatever. But I really feel like there's a passion behind all the movies that of his that have hit at least on some level, and then a lot of the ones that haven't, they felt much more sterile and cold and by the numbers. And I feel like that a lot of that has to do with passion. I'd really like to see him really stay with the low budget concept that he's been doing lately. I think that the trappings of the big budget films were part of the reason why he wasn't as successful. And then finally, I saw Split. I really enjoyed Split. I really want to see what comes next, especially after the ending. So I'm not going to say anything more than that because I don't want to give anything away, but I would love to see him do more than that.
As far as the future of M. Night Shyamalan's career, I agree with Matthew Movies. Definitely, I want to see where things go with Unbreakable. What happens with Bruce Willis's character. Especially at this point, and people that are in the know, if you're in the know, you're in the know, basically, and you know why there is so much hype about that. So, I really hope to see that happen soon. It's been way too long. There should have been, a sequel to Unbreakable years ago, really. So, I'm really looking forward to that. I really hope that Samuel Jackson's character, Mr. Glass, is brought into the mix. That would be just phenomenal. Now, other than that, I think M. Night Shyamalan maybe should step out of his comfort zone some. I mean, he doesn't have to write everything that he does. For example, Spike Lee, I think Spike Lee's career has kind of nosedived. I used to be a big fan of his. It's been so long since he did a movie that I really liked. But the last two movies that he did that I really was a fan of were Inside Man and The 25th Hour. He didn't write either one of those, but he did a great job directing them. I think M. Night Shyamalan could be the same way. Sometimes he may need to work with other people's writing and just do a phenomenal job with them. So I don't think he has to write everything that he does. And also, even though Split had a great twist, he needs to get past that hump. Like, I think he's allowed that to hold him back, and he feels like that's what it's all about. And if there's not a twist, people are going to be unsatisfied. And yeah, maybe there will be some people like that, but at the same time, those are the same people that complain about there always being a twist. So he shouldn't really focus on that, because some people are just going to complain regardless. He needs to make sure that he's telling great stories. So, like I said, again, I hope that he will be open to doing, doing scripts based that other people have written, working with those. And I really want to see him mix up genres as well, and work with some more original ideas. And I know that when we say original ideas, there really aren't too many new ideas. I mean, even Sixth Sense is basically that's not a new idea. That plot is that twist, I should say, is nothing new. There's a Twilight Zone episode called The Hitchhiker that has the same twist. And if you watch enough Twilight Zone, then there aren't too many new ideas out there, because people basically have to work with these older ideas and make them interesting, kind of update them. So, I think he needs to keep that in mind. And then also, I want to see him cross genres, like I said, not always stick to sci-fi. That kind of, I think he seems to feel that that's his wheelhouse, but he can go beyond that. I'd like to see him maybe do like a crime thriller or something. As a matter of fact, he could do a great job with that, because he has that kind of slow, deliberate style, and he can add so much tension to a crime thriller. So that would be phenomenal, in my opinion. So, I definitely want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about M. Night Shyamalan's career? What do you think are the high points? What do you think are the low points? I want to thank Matthew Movies for collaborating with me once again. I really do like doing these videos. Eventually, he and I got to get it worked out where we can actually have a discussion in a video. That's something we want to work on. But, like I said, let me know what you think about M. Night Shyamalan's career. Also, if you've seen the movie Split, I definitely want to hear your thoughts as well. And, I said before, it's kind of hard to avoid spoilers. And I feel like if you want to see Split, you've probably seen it by now. So I'm going to say speak freely. Speak freely down in the comments. And let's really have a good discussion about that. Again, thank you all for watching. And you all take care. Till next time.